Hi everyone, this is Lori with astrolata.com. I'm her newest advanced intuitive astrologer, and I started a series called Crimes, Critters, and Cruelty this week where I featured Alex Murdaugh, a former trial attorney and someone who worked in the prosecutor's office, who is likely a murderer and has wielded and curled the law to his favor for many, many years. He was arrested this past week on Thursday down in Florida and thrown in jail for yet another criminal charge. So stay tuned because we're looking at all this, and please go find that first video that talks about a family saga that's been going on for 100 years. Um, this is part 2 of the second video featuring Paul Murdaugh. And in that first, please forgive me if I repeat, I clicked to read the screen that showed his birth chart while I was talking to you, and it cut the video off. So please forgive me if I repeat. I am a traumatic brain injury survivor who has lost what's called your working memory, and it makes things difficult. So just bear with me. The information is interesting. I know that I started the first part of the video saying that we should not um, give adoration and accolades to the deceased when they were monsters in their lives. Paul Murdaugh was found dead, lying beside his mother on June 7th, 2021, at age 22 years old. But I gotta tell you that I'm kind of an archaeological astrologer and I love history. I may have already said that. So see the first video about his father, who's got a whole host of criminal activity that he's being charged for and will be prosecuted for, including feigning his own death, trying to fake his own. Well, I won't say fake his own death. I think that was his way out. I explained that families have similar planetary energy and patterns. We astrologers study probability statistics, and that's why astrology is a science. This is not pop astrology, though that can be fun. I'm a rather serious character and mature, and I'm interested in these kinds of stories. Are you? So please subscribe to the channel. This is going to be an ongoing series. I think it's going to be really exciting. And because am producing this particular video for Lotta's channel as well, I can't put links because it goes to our administrator. But I will put links that I encourage you to check out in the video that when I produce this for 3 Keys Astrology as well. It's my work, it's my series, and I love it, and I hope you will too. My point is that I hope and pray that if enough of us get outraged by this kind of corrupt favor in families, that the attention put on them for the families that are left in the wake of the rubble of these monsters with law degrees, they finally get recompense. And I mean for Mallory Beach, I mean for Gloria Satterfield, and especially for Stephen Smith, who was brutally murdered. Now, Paul Murdaugh has a son in Aries. He was born on April 14th, 1999, and died in a double homicide right beside his mother. It's interesting that his father was the first person on the scene and didn't call for help for a half an hour. It's interesting that rumor has it that his mother was seeking a divorce. And many of us that are female, that have given birth, that have been part of bad marriages, often stay till our babies graduate high school or college, just for safety and security, just so that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people don't have their lives uprooted when we live with monsters. And make no mistake, M is for murder. And it's very fitting for this whole family. Um, I'd like you to go look, not days after this double homicide occurred of Paul Murdaugh, whose chart we're looking at today, specifically about similarities to his father's chart that I analyzed in the very first video in this series, Alex Murdaugh, who's actually Randy for his first name, but he goes by his second name because Randolph Murdaugh, the first, second, and third, have owned and established the law firm of 100 years ago. that now is fooling around trying to save their asses and their assets. I want you to please go look at that Good Morning America interview because um, indeed over 5,000 people a year are prosecuted by the Murdaughs and have been for the last 100 years in crime. So they're gone to prison. Over a dozen people at the hands of the Murdaughs and the prosecutor's office were given death penalties, and yet the oldest brother of Alex Murdaugh's sister, whose sister-in-law was murdered, and nephew on June 7, 2021, sits in front of a global audience on Good Morning America and with feigned tears. Uncle John looked a little more honestly because it was two brothers of Alex Murdaugh. In 10 weeks from that filming, would indeed be suing his own brother to save asses and assets in the law firm calling embezzlement. But during that time, please note, they had a $100,000 reward for the prosecution of any information to the finding of the criminal who murdered their beloved sister-in-law and nephew, this John, and I think they call him Randy, but I think he was Peters Randolph Murdaugh. The older brother is the one I really want you to pay attention to because he's lying through his teeth, though he's got um, access to the bar and law and is a licensed attorney for several years, like his brother, who's in prison in Florida just this Thursday for the insurance fraud when he defrauded um, Gloria Satterfield's two sons and hogged for himself a $4 million legal finding in a wrongful death suit. Two sons of Gloria Satterfield didn't see a penny of that money, and he told them to sue him so he could have all the money. Mr. Monopoly Murdaugh, Alex in jail. So not 10 weeks after this interview on Good Morning America, these guys are suing their brother, the grievous widower, that lost his son. They're all corrupt. They all smell badly of murder, and they've all got blood on their hands. They sat there, and the reason that it's so heinous is that though they prosecuted all these families, though they know that their nephew was involved in likely the murder of Stephen Smith, that was the most cruelly murdered, who had an 8-inch gaping hole in the side of his head, um, was covered in blood, likely raped, and then thrown in the middle of a road. Um, it makes me sick as a mother. It makes me sick and so sorrowful for their family. Please band together if you're watching these videos. Write to your congressman, write to the state, especially if you live in the Carolinas. This is wrong. These people need to be stopped once and for all, not given more money, more favor, and more access to curl the law. So, Paul Murdaugh um, was born April 14th, 1999, and in his short life, I can assure you, as an astrologer who looks at history and is a bit of an archaeologist in the chart, I guarantee you, was having one hell of a year in 2018. Mars was on his sun, and for 6 months, that's an agitation, that's a heat when you're redheaded and it's summer is hot. When he killed was part, I'm sure, with his brother, killed Stephen Smith. They had baseball bats. They were coming from a baseball game. I referred to you in part one, where to go here, all of the details for an incredible investigative reporting for whose video I'll link here. So March, the video that or the dates that I'm looking at for this production, and I'll go back, believe me when I tell you, and give you all of the astrological, cosmological details of Stephen Smith's date and Gloria Satterfield's. So he was born with his sun in Aries, and he was born. Um, every one of these murders, Mallory Beach from the fatal boating accident, head injury. Gloria Satterfield, who so-called fell down the family stairs, and I don't believe it, because rumor is that he pushed her. Paul Murdaugh, the deceased, who was a monster, in my opinion. A vicious little spoiled brat who knew that he would have favor in the law no matter what he did. He was a megalomaniac, he was despotic, and he led all of his friends into the tragedy that occurred February 19th. We can see him, indeed, the first one in the bar on footage at the boating accident. And who did he call his grandfather at the prosecutor's office? And then when his father and grandfather showed up at the hospital the night that Mallory Beach wouldn't be found dead for over a week, these five traumatized kids, all underage, all drinking alcohol, no one was given sobriety tests, and the sheriff's department, the police officers involved, actually recused themselves and got out of the case. And for 7 months, this spoiled brat, Paul Murdaugh, who's now dead and has all kinds of blood on his hands and on the family, um, in the family, um, didn't get charged for anything for 7 months because of the favors in his family. It makes me sick. And the other thing is, when you watch the uncles on this interview, isn't it interesting that just this week, when Alex Murdaugh was arrested down in Florida on Thursday, they rescinded the $100,000 reward money? Have you ever heard of that? I haven't. Why? Well, logic tells us because the murderer is in jail. Because the murderer was Alex Murdaugh. And I said it. I'm saying it. And I'm saying that his sons are evil. I'm saying it. I've read over 6,000 charts, and you'll be mind boggled when I tell you what was going on the night of this accident, the boating accident. And I promise, if enough of you are interested, I will tell you. You don't even have to be interested. I'm going there. I'm going to analyze what was going on in the head of Paul Murdaugh and his life the night Stephen Smith and the late Gloria Satterfield were, in my opinion, murdered. Paul Murdaugh went to his grave with 3 felony criminal charges, but his family's got favor, and they hired the best attorneys to get him off. And don't listen to them either, because they're on the news talking, and all these charges fall to the wayside once Mallory's um, death um, had no justice, Stephen Smith's death had no justice, and Gloria Satterfield's death had no justice. That's why I'm encouraging you to please write to your congressmen and the statesmen in the city of South Carolina. There's some fine people down there. I'm calling Trey Gowdy my favorite, actually, person who served the United States of America, a former prosecutor that I hope gets deeply involved. Maybe he already is. If he is, let me know. So, so Paul Murdaugh was born with his sun in Aries, right down at the bottom of his chart. On the bones of his chart, just like his father, I explained in the first video, there's a Mars and Saturn complex. Very hot, fiery temperament, energy, passions, and against cold, dead Saturn, that authority figure that puts the stops. Both of these were bad little boys. And though I haven't analyzed Buster's chart, all the signs are there. I told you we see repeated patterns in charts. So we've got high accident energy the night of the accident when Uranus just passed his sun and was conjunct Mars. That's a transit energy. That's the energy that's going on the night of this fatal accident from Mallory Beach, where the other kids were traumatized, all underage drinking. The moon was in Pluto. And I don't know if I said this when the video was cut off, when I tried to look at his chart and film. Um, the moon represents mother and child. It's the female population, but it's the public at large because mankind, we're the womb of creation on planet Earth. So moon represents the public, and that night, that fatal night, when the kids started their escapade on February 23rd in the dark, and were on a boat without lights, and just kept fueling up and fueling up on alcohol and drugs, that at 2:30 in the morning, when he pulled the boat back full throttle and its nose went in the air, these kids got ejected and they hit the abutment of the bridge in Paris Island. Um, on that night, the moon was in Scorpio. That moon was on his Mars. And indeed, they said he stripped on the boat. He spit on his girlfriend. He slapped her and he knocked her on the ground. Is this a nice little boy? Absolutely not. And as I said, I don't know if this part got recorded, males between age 18 and 28 have more testosterone coursing through their blood than at any other time in their lives. And these are the years that we've got to be careful and we've got to keep our sons away from alcohol. It's really bad, especially if you come from the lineage Scotch Irish, Ireland, all that fiery, freckled skin, red hair, strawberry blondes. This is again Martian, Marshall. And we see this and in father and son, the repeated patterns. As I said, and I can't remember if this part got recorded or not, there's a genetic predisposition for homosexuality, and it skips from uncle to nephew, uncle to nephew, uncle to nephew. I'm seeing these repeated patterns in his chart and his father's chart. I'm going to be looking at all of them for this homosexuality tendency. They're very hot and cold issues in both father and son's chart, and you children learn what they live. When you learn that you can do whatever you want and never get in trouble for it, you keep on making trouble. On the night of this murder, when Mallory Beach's body wasn't found for an entire week, when these kids were traumatized, when another girl on the boat was bleeding from the accident and injury, when the kids got knocked unconscious and thrown off the boat. No lights on the boat, guys. And a maniacal mastermind at the helm of the ship, drunker than a skunk and raging. He had this alter ego that the friends called Timmy, where he slapped his girlfriend, spit on her, was controlling, was stripping off of all of his clothes, although it was 45 degrees that night. And this maniacal behavior was unashamed. Now, we know people that are abusive, and we know people who do their abuse behind closed doors. It's a whole nother animal when you're that full of yourself that you'll do it in front of your friends who have friends and family. He didn't care. He thought he was above the law. It was proven over and over again from 2018 to deaths that he was very close to. And then now it's 2019. There's major hot issues between the hot Mars. His father's Mars was in Aries at the top of the chart, and we're watching a fall from grace involving murder, weapons, a shot in the head. And this son has his son in Aries. Mallory died of head injuries, Stephen Smith died of head injuries, and Gloria Satterfield died of head injuries. The midheaven, as I explained in the father's video and analysis of crimes, critters, and cruelty, the midheaven is where everybody sees what we're doing in the world. We can't hide. It's our reputation. And that night, the moon was in Scorpio at the top of the chart on his Mars opposing his Saturn. And the transit Uranus and Mars were on in at that axis of roots, home, and family. And that accident energy of Uranus and Mars was to a T square to his Neptune. People that have T squares with Neptune that are involved with Mars and Saturn have to be very careful with chemical alteration of the blood, such as alcohol and drugs. They can't control it. They do turn into someone else. And not only that night was a transit moon in Scorpio, but it was square his ascendant of Pluto, Saturn, and Venus on his ascendant. That was an that's an ugly triple conjunction. If you go look at my videos at 3 Keys Astrology on YouTube, I did a Tale of Two Scorpios, Scorpio Secrets, and really sad videos about the Persephone story and how rape happens when Pluto and Venus, and cruelty and like overpowering, controlling, maniacal others, instigating crime and harm others when we see Pluto to Venus. Mallory Beach got hurt on that boating accident. That energy was squaring the transit Uranus conjunct Mars that was opposite his Mars and conjunct his Saturn and just past his Sun, his vital life force. Ugly, ugly, ugly. Again, issues of homosexuality. We see Uranus in a very compromising position to that Mars and Saturn in his chart. And I guarantee he was one malicious son of a gun in 2018. All summer long, in the heat of the summer, the outdoor heat makes this type of person that's martial, marching, red-headed and red-skinned, even more hot, even more angry, even more impulsive, even more frustrated. And the reason they say Stephen Smith was killed is because he was having a sexual liaison with Paul Murdaugh's older brother, Buster, the one who was supposed to reap the $10 million when Alex Murdaugh paid his best friend to shoot him in the head so that the kid could collect a $10 million insurance policy. He was released on 20 measly $1,000 on bond for that shenanigan, but he's in jail now. And again, these people are multimillionaires, if not billionaires, and they're getting favors in their bonds and hearings. Paul Murdaugh, the deceased monster we're talking about, wasn't even brought up on charges for 7 months after Mallory was killed. And now there's 3 felony charges that have all been dismissed because he's deceased. Okay, so talk about a night in hell. We've got the transit moon opposite Saturn, um, opposite his Mars, in Scorpio, and that axis, Taurus and Scorpio, is sex and money, guys. There's a lot of complications with this boy when it comes to sex, money, and his privileged attitude. He thought he could get away with anything. And talk about a night in hell, that night on the boat. This complex involves his parents. The parental axis is indeed the ecliptic in the chart of this kid, where Saturn, Pluto, and Venus were on the ascendant, opposing the descendant, and squaring that accident energy of transit Uranus Mars conjunction, opposite and conjunct his natal Saturn, opposite the moon in Scorpio, attached to his own Mars in Scorpio. That's ugly. It's ice cold vengeance with Scorpio, opposite Saturn, Mars, and Scorpio. It's someone who doesn't forget and will get you one way or the other. I talk about that in the Tale of Two Scorpios. So yeah, this is a really interesting analysis of that night of the boating accident, and horrific. He's got his Neptune is conjunct a little bit of a wider orb than I normally use, but it's apropos in this case to Uranus. And when Neptune is compromised, it is alcoholism, scandal, drug use, betrayals, and that night, it's in his natal chart, square his Mars. Uranus squaring Mars is instant rage. It's somebody that's unhinged who's drinking and drugging. And this was his lifestyle. And I'll lay money that he was one of those kids that was doing early indulgences around age 12 or 13. I can go look at those dates and make that definitive claim. But talk about a night in hell, and talk about poor people caught up in their scams and schemes, and 3 dead bodies before this double murder. So please comment below. Let's talk about this. I'll link the video on my 3 Keys Astrology channel to that amazing investigative reporter that I referred to in the first part of the video. Look at the uncles. I do believe the Uncle John a little more than I believe the Uncle Randy. I think he goes by Peters. Like I said, not even 9 or 10 weeks later, he's sitting in front of the audience, grieving with his poor widower brother, and then widower brother, I think. I mixed that up. Anyway, and then 9 weeks later, saving his own ass in the law firm and accusing of embezzlement, and then offering a $100,000 reward that gets rescinded this week when Alex Murdaugh is arrested on Thursday. This is awful, but this is real life, and we have to protect our sons between 18 and 28. I know friends that have lost their kids. I had benefits for them when I managed a bar and restaurant so that the police would get more involved. The hazing, the fraternity, the sorority, this rite of passage to being an adult in the kids' college years and after the age of 18. We got to protect our kids and educate our kids and let them realize just how dangerous the chemicals of alcohol and drugs are in one's blood when we can't be reasonable, we don't make good decisions, and never to follow the leader. Teach your kids to say no. Teach your kids to call you. Teach your kids not to get on that boat in the dark. Why did they get on the boat in the dark that night, though it was freezing cold outside? at 45 degrees because they were intoxicated. They'd been drinking for 4 hours and they knew the police would be out looking for, having patrolled for DWI. So maniacal conniving, entitled brat, and likely murderer, um, Paul Murdaugh Jr., or Paul Murdaugh, not Jr., um, was cunning and conniving in his drunken state, because he knew the chances of them getting a DWI on the water were a lot less than any of them being in their cars. And the escapade went on for hours and hours, from around 7 o'clock that night till 2:30 in the morning at the time of the boating accident. If you have any details, please comment. If you're related to any of these characters, please reach out to me. I have a private Three Keys Astrology Facebook group, and I teach astrology, and we want details, and we want to put the heat on the prosecutors and people in charge of the law to get rid of all the Murdaughs. Let that be done and dead once and for all, because this legacy is ugly. And while they may have done good, this is unconscionable and out of control. And so, boy, it just fries me that people like them get away with stuff like this. But do comment below on this if you have family members, diabetic that turned alcoholic. This is a thing medically, for sure. And do comment below if you're part of the heritage I am, Scotch Irish or Ireland, with that temperament. If you have Moon Mars, if you have Moon Uranus, this is explosive energy when in bad aspects. And that's why these traits are passed down and down. If a child sees daddy hitting mommy, he's likely to hit his own wife. If a child sees family violence, abusers become abusive. It's proven over and over again in psychological circles, and the medical links and inclinations genetically to family members that are gay, family members that are have rage and high blood pressure and stroke and heart attack issues. It's hot. It's because you're hot blooded, and sun in any if your three keys are in Aries, and if your moon is attached to the fire planets and opposite, conjunct, quincunxt, which is an inconjunct malefic planets. Whoo! That's like you are like a pile of dynamite. Mars in Scorpio is conniving. It's cunning. I know a lot of you watching this video have this triple conjunction because I gave birth to a daughter, and for long periods of time our outer planets stay in certain signs, and those characteristics are collective. But it doesn't mean that you're bad. A lot of police officers and detectives have Mars with Pluto because they're stomping out crime, but there will be an interest or a tie somehow in the lifetime to criminal activities, whether you're on the good side of it or the bad side of it, whether you're doing the dirty deeds or trying to catch the people that are doing the dirty deeds. So I hope you've enjoyed this second series, second video, part 2 in the series for Paul Murdaugh of crimes, critters, and cruelty. Thank you so much. Please make all your comments. Reach out to me. Let's talk. I'm teaching astrology one-on-one, so please get a hold of me if you're interested in that. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be doing that, but I've had some amazing students that are loving this astrology, and I'll be doing some videos to introduce you to those people too, because they're wonderful. All right, you take care. Let's make sure our congressmen and legislators, and when you're voting, pay attention to who's in the prosecutor's office. Pay attention who you're electing in these high positions, who wield and dictate sentencing. And the fact of the matter is, every fatal boating accident in South Carolina, the person was immediately arrested and put in jail. But not Paul Murdaugh. It was 7 months before he was tried. And he wasn't sanctioned at all for his alcoholism, at all, though he was clearly drunk, drugged, and enraged. And a family lost their daughter, their sister, their granddaughter, their niece. It's not okay. So say your prayers for the families of Gloria Satterfield, Stephen Smith, and Mallory Beach while we dig a little deeper into these heinous crimes and the family saga Murdaugh and murder. Bye for now.